the Lamborghini Huracan Sterrato, the last ever Huracan. It's also the last ever naturally aspirated Lamborghini. Listen to that noise, because this is the last ever time you'll hear that sound in a production car. Soak it up.
This should be a happy time, but it's also a bit of a sad one, because the Sterrato, despite its engine and despite its status as the Huracan's grand finale, is actually the slowest, least powerful Lamborghini currently on sale.
0 to 62, 3.4 seconds. I mean, that's slower than a Urus. Top speed, 161 miles an hour. That's slower than a Miura. And that car came out in 1966. This is actually the slowest Lamborghini since they made tractors. Not much of a send-off, is it?
Or is it? While the Sterrato might not appear to follow the usual supercar mantra of being faster and more powerful with every generation, it does follow the Lamborghini mantra of being madder and more flamboyant than everything that came before it. And it's certainly the most tail-happy Lamborghini in history, effortlessly easing into power slides at every opportunity. It's clear, after even a few moments behind the wheel, that this Lambo isn't one designed for setting lap times at the track. This Lambo is designed for outright fun, in places like this. The name Sterrato literally means dirt road, so to fully understand what makes this car tick, that's where we need to go.
And what a dirt road this is. We are currently in Verano in Italy, about half an hour away from Imola, in an active quarry. And look at the state of this. It is absolutely gnarly. Now, there is no question, you would never, under any circumstances, bring your supercar to a place like this. And yet here I am, in the latest Lamborghini supercar, hammering down into a quarry in a place where anything outside of a Urus would get absolutely destroyed. It feels so wrong, but I'll tell you what, Lamborghini have gone from building off-road tractors to supercars to off-road supercars, and I am here for it. Cheeky little drift. Oh yes. Best tractor ever. So at this point, you probably have two questions. How have they done it, and why? Let's start with the why, first of all. You see, the Huracan is very rapidly approaching the end of its life, and Lamborghini wanted this car to go out with a bang. The question is, what do they do with it? Do they chase more power? Well, to be honest, the naturally aspirated V10 is pretty much near the limit of the power it can create. Do they chase more hardcore aggression? Well, no, because the STO already ticks that box. So Lamborghini had to create something that delivered a new experience. And to do that, they had to dream big. That dream began during the development of the Urus. Whilst testing that car in off-road environments, Lamborghini's designers began to wonder whether it was possible to achieve a similar experience in one of their sports cars. They put things in place almost immediately, gaining access to a Huracan set aside for durability testing to build what eventually became the Sterrato with a very simple objective: to create a car designed exclusively for fun in any environment. So that's the why. Now the how. First of all, they raised the ride height by 44 millimeters. Then they softened the suspension by 35% at the front and 25% at the rear. Then they installed a bunch of underbody protection to make sure the car doesn't destroy itself on rough terrain, and bolted on this very fetching set of LED rally style lights. Then they widened the body by 30 millimeters at the front and 35 millimeters at the rear, particularly by bolting on this very fetching set of wheel arch extensions that allow it to accommodate the next big thing: a set of Bridgestone Dueler all-terrain run-flat tires. And not even the Dakar has those. However, the Sterrato might not be as well prepared as the 911 in terms of off-road accessories. That car comes with all manner of kit you can throw on the top.
bags, a shovel, an axe. There's even a tent. The Sterrato doesn't even come with cup holders, but what it does have is the same engine as the STO. But given the fact that this car was designed for use partly on dirt, the conventional air intakes on the side ran the risk of ingesting debris, so these were bypassed in favor of a roof snorkel. And with that, the recipe for the Sterrato was complete.
Now, you might have noticed that this car uses the same engine as you get in the Lamborghini Huracan STO. And in the STO, you get a massive 640 horsepower. In this, you only get 610. The reason for that is because of the snorkel on top of the roof. It doesn't ingest quite as much air as the side intakes do in the Huracan STO. But I'm not wanting for power. This thing has an abundance of torque. The same amount as you get in the STO, 600 Newton meters. And it is so quick. I am gonna miss this engine when it's gone. It revs to over 8,500 RPM. What a unit. The Sterrato is all-wheel drive, so it does a fantastic job of putting the power down, especially with the help of these tires. There's also a few different driving modes. There's Strada for the road, there's Sport, and in that mode, it's incredibly rear biased. You might have seen earlier on the racetrack how much of a sideways hooligan this car is. And in rally mode, it's still rear biased, but it actually shuffles slightly more power towards the front wheels to give you extra traction, and also reduces the amount of help you get from the ESC, and also increases the amount of torque vectoring by braking you get. So what happens is, you get on the brakes, turn in violently, and then the car grips that inside rear wheel, gets it rotating, and then it's all about holding it on the throttle to maintain the slide through the corners, and you can slide for days in this car. I think the most impressive thing is just how much confidence you have when driving this car. I mean, I am absolutely hurtling around in a quarry with not a care in the world. You would not be able to do this in an Aventador, in a Huracan, or in any other Lamborghini product outside of a Urus. And here I am in a supercar, and it's living with it. Speaking of which, I wonder how it copes on the road. You don't have to be a genius or a psychic to predict that the Huracan Sterrato is going to be pretty bloody good on the public road. If you've ever driven a supercar in places like the UK where the roads are completely beaten up in places, then you will know how much of a beating a supercar will take, and the sound of carbon fiber slamming into asphalt will haunt you forever. But not in this. This is an absolute dream to drive, even on pretty awful roads like this one. The softness of the suspension and the extra travel you get mean the Sterrato actually feels a bit like a crossover. I'm also convinced that these tires, because of the fact that they're softer and a bit more squidgy, also contribute to this having a much nicer ride. The one downside are these seats. They are quite hard, unnecessarily hard, I would say. This isn't a hardcore track weapon, so having these hugely uncomfortable bucket seats, I think, is a bit unnecessary. As for the quietness, I'm actually pleasantly surprised by that as well. I mean, yeah, it's got a V10, but if you stick it into Strada mode, it keeps the revs at a really low, subdued level. And of course, these tires are never going to be the quietest in the world, but they're actually no louder than a set of winter tires on any other Lamborghini. I'm convinced that if you were to ask a passenger to sit in this car on a cushion, with a blindfold on, with some earplugs in, they'd probably think they were sat in something like a Volkswagen Golf. I really like it. As a daily, I can't think of a better supercar than this, you know. I really can't.
Could it actually replace a standard Huracan as a road car? Honestly, yes. That's not to say it's perfect though. It's still a Huracan, which means there are limitations to its daily livability. Storage space is not the best, but at least it does have some, unlike the STO. The V10 is very thirsty. But more to the point, this car is incredibly rare and super expensive for what it is. Lamborghini will only make 1,499 examples, with each one costing a whopping £232,000, £30,000 more than a Technica. Not that it matters, because every single one has already been sold.
I said earlier that this is the slowest Lambo in something like 60 years, but is that a big deal? Absolutely not. I mean, here I am doing less than 45 miles an hour with a massive smile on my face. Would I be having this much fun going this slowly in an STO? No. The thing with most supercars is their limits are so high. You have to drive so incredibly quickly to get anywhere near their limits that it's just super intimidating. In this, the limits are low-hanging fruit. The Sterrato proves you don't have to be going at 200 miles an hour to have fun. This thing just cracks me up.
Maybe its best trick is the fact that it's been seemingly set up to predominantly go sideways. That's easy enough on low grip surfaces like this, especially in rally mode, but the Sterrato is loose in any environment. Even when on a track, this is a car you have to drive at 8/10, braking early and accelerating progressively in order to make the quickest progress. Push any faster and its torque vectoring and ESC have been deliberately set up simply to throw the back end out. It's a drift car. Is it as good as its main rival, the Dakar? I had suspected the Porsche might be better in extreme environments, but the Sterrato can take a hell of a beating and simply begs for more. The Porsche feels like a slightly better engineered exercise, although maybe that's just perception, especially with its rally pedigree. But the Sterrato is just as tough.
Comparing the two might be slightly unnecessary really, because they're two completely different cars. And this is a proper Lambo with the ability to just put a smile on your face and make you feel like a child again. With this car, you just get lost in the moment, lost in the experience, lost in the sound, lost in the fun. You have to pinch yourself that it's actually happening. And also pinch yourself because I can't actually believe that this might be the last time we ever experience something quite like this.
With this, we're seeing the end of the Huracan and the end of Lamborghini's naturally aspirated V10s. As these cars disappear into the sunset, we can at least console ourselves that the Sterrato is a raucous and reckless celebration, the purest embodiment of Lamborghini as a brand, and the best possible end to an unforgettable era.